Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Dave Smith, and their ilk are lying to you. They're not just wrong, they're actively, shamelessly misleading millions of their followers about what's happening in Iran, what America First actually means, and what Donald Trump has always stood for. If you trust what these people are telling you, you're being sold a dangerous fantasy. Tucker, Candace, and the others are trying to convince you that there are only two camps in this Iran debate. Them, the isolationists who want nothing to do with it, and everyone else, who they label as neocon warmongers who want boots on the ground, US-led regime change similar to Iraq. That's a lie. The reality is there are three different camps in the Republican Party, and none of them are the neocon regime-building faction that they are painting the rest of the Republican Party as. And look, I know the news is moving fast. By the time you watch this, the headlines may have changed, but the core issues here aren't going anywhere. Honesty, America's interests, and the difference between real leadership and online theatrics. Now, I'll be honest here. I used to watch Tucker Carlson every night. I was working as an asphalt plant operator in Norfolk, Nebraska. I lived out of a hotel there 4 nights a week. And I would go to work, come back to the hotel, do my schoolwork because at the time I was getting an online accounting degree through Arizona State, and then I would tune into Tucker. But over time, I began to realize that Tucker only ever seemed to say things that his audience would want to hear. He would focus on fringe, crazy leftist stories, rarely criticize Trump, and if he did, he would tiptoe around the issue and package his criticisms in a way that seemed suitable for his audience. Now, maybe that's just the world of corporate media, but since leaving Fox, my views and criticisms of him have only been validated. So when he went to Twitter, his pandering to his audience got worse. His audience changed, and so did his persona. His audience was now this perpetually online, increasingly radical crowd. His rhetoric became extreme, dishonest, and quite frankly, oftentimes dumb. He embraced the podcast bro crowd, the Holocaust deniers, the Churchill was a bad guy crowd, and he's the founder of the Putin isn't so bad, look how nice the subway station is. Putin kills his political enemies, but who doesn't? So, to be fair, at least with this Israel-Iran issue, Tucker, he's been pretty consistent in his more isolationist views. At least he has since 2020 when he spoke out against the Soleimani strikes. That part of him has not changed. But what has changed is how he packages his isolationism. He's now willing to platform the Holocaust deniers, defend dictators, and embrace increasingly radical voices to maintain his online audience. And as we'll discuss later, he's willing to crown himself and his crowd as the MAGA movement, instead of Trump. Now, with the Iran and the Israel war, his lies are being exposed for the world to see, if you're smart enough to recognize them. He, and many others who pander to that same crowd that he is, are claiming that you're either an isolationist or a neocon, Iraq-style nation builder. But that's not true at all. Instead, there are three camps, and none of them are the nation builders. Camp 1, where Tucker and them stand, are the isolationists. They want the U.S. to do nothing about Iran's nuclear program and think that it is a problem that Israel is attacking Iran's nuclear facilities. If Iran does get a bomb, who cares? Somehow, to them, that does not affect United States interests. Camp 2, which is where Trump stands, is focused on preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons through targeted strikes if necessary, but they explicitly reject regime change as a goal. The military options being considered are limited to precision airstrikes using stealth bombers to take out Fordow, Iran's nuclear facility built underneath a mountain and at 90 meters of concrete. We are the only country with the equipment necessary to take out Fordow, and that is where our involvement would begin and end. Trump would either do that, or I think what he would prefer is to pressure the Iranian regime to surrender Fordow and their other nuclear facilities before the U.S. gets involved with an airstrike. If the Ayatollahs would give up Fordow and the other nuclear sites and allow them to be destroyed, they could remain in power and the U.S. would not have to expend any resources on this. This position is in line with Trump's historical foreign policy of peace through strength, which I've called in the past strategic engagement. Now, the third camp in the Republican Party are in favor of regime change. But here's the deal. None of these people are suggesting that we need Iraq or Afghanistan-style nation building. What they want is the U.S. to take out Iran's nuclear facilities, apply economic pressure by sanctioning countries who take Iranian oil, and then let the Iranian people, who hate the current Iranian regime, to rise up themselves. Some, like Lindsey Graham, would be in favor of an Israeli airstrike that kills Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of Iran. And that is what Israel wants to do, but Trump has pushed against that. But let me make this extremely, extremely clear. Nobody is calling for U.S.-led, boots-on-the-ground regime change. Nobody. What they want is either a strike taking out Khomeini or a Reagan-style pressure that led to the fall of the Soviet Union. That's it. Anyone telling you otherwise, Tucker, Candace, the Hodgetwins, Dave Smith, they're lying to you. Flat out lying, pandering to their crowd. And speaking of their crowd, Let's talk about Candace Owens specifically. Her shift isn't just about foreign policy. I think it's a lot more sinister and has anti-Semitism behind it. She's defended Holocaust deniers like Nick Fuentes, liked tweets accusing Jewish rabbis of drinking Christian blood, and has repeatedly attacked Jewish conservatives. She goes around now trying to find weird connections, trying to make random people point out that they have Jewish blood in them, and that's supposed to mean something bad about them. That's all she does now. But she supported the Soleimani strike in 2020, but now that Israel is leading the charge against Iran, she's suddenly become an isolationist. Her motivations are not hard to figure out. This is the crowd that Tucker and others are now pandering to. Not just isolationists, but often anti-Semitic isolationists who oppose any action that might benefit Israel. Now, I'm not saying that Tucker and some of the others are anti-Semitic. Many of them don't push the types of conspiracy theories that Candace does. But Tucker's new crowd is the same crowd as hers, which means that he is pandering to the anti-Semitic online right. They want you to believe that anyone who isn't in Camp 1, like Donald Trump, is in this make-believe neocon nation-building camp. Even the most hawkish voices like Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham have rejected that, but that will not stop Tucker from using Ted Cruz as a pawn in his lies. So Tucker recently sat down with Ted Cruz, and leading up to it and since then has been releasing clips from the interview that make it look like Ted Cruz is just a flat-out idiot. So let's take a look at one of these clips now.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's,
because,
it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and predominantly Shia. Okay,
it's not even... You don't know anything about Iran. So
okay,
actually,
I am not the Tucker Carlson expert on Iran.
You're a senator who's calling for the overthrow of the government.
You're the one who
don't know anything about the country.
So what Tucker is doing here is just dishonest. Instead of actually engaging in the discussion, he is playing a gotcha game with Cruz with stuff that Tucker probably Googled 5 minutes before the interview. Now, to be fair, would it be helpful to know the population of Iran and its ethnic makeup? Sure, you can make that argument. But you don't need to know that stuff in order to know that the current Iranian regime is harmful to the United States interests. They openly hate America, openly want to destroy America, and wanted to assassinate President Trump before the election, and are funding terrorism all across the Middle East to hurt our strongest allies. Is it crazy to say that the regime needs to fall? No, not at all. And this gets to the heart of the problem. Tucker's isolationism has always been consistent, but now it's packaged with increasingly toxic rhetoric. The audience he's chasing, the perpetually online, often anti-Semitic crowd, doesn't just oppose foreign intervention on principle, they oppose it specifically when it involves supporting Israel or standing up to Israel's enemies. That's not principled isolationism. That's something much darker. But Tucker, Candace, and others are now claiming that Trump, who hasn't even gone as far as Ted Cruz in pushing for regime change, has abandoned the MAGA base. To Tucker, he is the MAGA base, not Trump. To Tucker, Candace, the Hodgetwins, and the rest of them, their online audience is MAGA. They speak out into their echo chamber that is their audience. They all get retweeted and likes from the same people, and then they declare themselves the leader of the MAGA and America First. To them, America First means retreating from the world, spending no money in the world. But that's not America First. America First means, as Trump has shown us in the past, that means using our military might where it would benefit America's interests. Strategic engagement. Engage where it would help us, ignore it if it doesn't affect us. That's why Trump hasn't done anything in Syria, but he's attacked the Houthis in Yemen and now is entertaining a strike against Iran. Identify our biggest threats and take them out. But don't get involved in a decades-long, nation-building war that ultimately hurts our interests. Strategically strike when necessary, otherwise watch carefully from afar. That is Trump. That is MAGA. That is America First. Not Tucker, not Candace, not the Hodgetwins, not Dave Smith. It's Trump. And the polling seems to support this. A recent Gray House poll showed that 72% of Republicans support a U.S. strike on Iran if necessary to help American interests. But this doesn't stop the Twitter echo chamber. Here's a tweet from the Hodgetwins just straight up claiming that the polling is false. It's because these people have created their own echo chamber with no room for dissent. If they see that there is dissent that disagrees with them and their echo chamber, it must be a lie. And this echo chamber isn't just isolationist, it's often anti-Semitic. The same voices opposing action against Iran are often the ones promoting the conspiracy theories about Jewish influence, defending Holocaust deniers, and attacking Jewish conservatives. They've created a toxic blend of isolationism and anti-Semitism that has nothing to do with America First principles. Now, there are some who are taking similar positions to Tucker and them, but they're doing it in a much more honest, nuanced way. Charlie Kirk, I think, is one of these people. He has strongly pushed against U.S. involvement in Iran, But he isn't pushing this idea that he is MAGA or lying about there only being two camps in this war. Instead, he stresses legitimate concerns that could come with regime topple in Iran. The possibility of civil war in Iran, millions of refugees, unease about what the future regime could be. As the old saying goes, better to the devil you know than the devil you don't. But Kirk has also done something that the others refuse to do. Trust Donald Trump. Trump has been here before. He knows what he is doing. Trump campaigned against starting or getting involved in wars, and he trusts that Trump will not do so. While Kirk is cautious about getting involved, he recognizes that Trump is the leader of MAGA, the leader of America first, and trusts that Trump has a plan to only engage to the extent necessary to protect America's interests. He doesn't resort to this clickbait, pandering position of, you're isolationist or a warmonger nation builder. He recognizes and respects that differences may exist. Now, some may hear this and think, but Israel's pushing for a regime change. They would prefer to have our boots on the ground building up a new government. And yeah, Israel may want that. Okay, but guess what? Trump doesn't. Okay, Israel and U.S. are two different countries. We have two different interests. Israel wants to put their interests first. We want to put our interests first. Of course, Israel would love it for the Iranian regime to fall and for someone like the United States to be there with a presence in Iran, ensuring that a new government gets off on the right foot. The current Iranian regime has been funding terrorism against Israel for 40 years. Of course, it would be their interest to have the regime fall. But America's interests are different, and Trump understands that. For us, a regime change could mean Iranian civil war and millions of refugees. Is that a sure thing that would happen? Not necessarily. We've seen regime changes that haven't fallen into civil war. The Soviet Union, for example, essentially all of Eastern Europe, other than Yugoslavia. Could Iran be like them and have a peaceful transition? That's certainly possible. The citizens of Iran are uniquely united against the Ayatollah, but it's not a certainty. So it's fine to question whether or not Iranian regime would be in America's interests, and it's also fine to weigh the risks and come to the conclusion that getting rid of the Ayatollah would be beneficial to the United States. Get rid of the terrorist regime for something new. Trust the Iranian people to be able to install a new government that they like, which, up to them, would be wildly different than the Ayatollah. But that's not U.S. troops, boots on the ground, Iraq-style regime change. Not at all. What we should be taking away from this whole thing is that there is debate over the Iran policy. It's complex and nuanced, with room for legitimate disagreements over the United States' role in the matter. But Tucker and Candace and their allies are deliberately misrepresenting this debate by creating a false binary, with one side of the binary being a camp that doesn't even exist within the Republican Party anymore. So don't buy into the false choices that are being peddled by the loudest voices online. The real debate isn't isolationism versus end this war. It's about how to protect America's interests without repeating the mistakes of the past. Don't let anyone, no matter how many followers they have, shut down honest debate. Demand honesty, demand truth. If you like that discussion, want some more, hit like and subscribe. I want to encourage discussion in the comments. My page is called A Journey to the Truth, and that's not because I am giving you the truth. It's because I believe that only through honest discussion can we all come closer to the truth. So I give my opinion. I want you guys to tell me where you think I'm wrong. Let me know what you think. I'll engage with the discussion. And then we see if, minds can be changed. I think it's only through honest discussion can we become closer to the truth. So like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you think.